Hi, Misha here, and I was actually kind of working on something pretty unrelated, and I came across something I thought was kind of interesting. In the Star Trek community and all that, the last couple of years there's been a lot of talk about Canon and all that stuff, and Discovery, and even kicking back to Enterprise and changing Canon. Honestly, I do and I don't care. I care, but as much as I care about anything fiction, I like continuity. I sincerely do. But I don't really get personally offended if it's not upheld. But this is something I noticed when I was a young kid. When I was young, Next Generation was on its primary initial run. I remember seeing some episodes in season 1 and season 2, more season 2. When season 1 came out, I was still relatively young. Anyway, I remember that. And then, of course, the original series was on syndication still, but at weird times, usually late at night. I remember it was like on at 11 or 12 p.m. on a Sunday. Anyway, I would have watched the original series. On top of that, sometimes the movie stores would have VHSs you could rent that had a couple of episodes per cassette tape. So anyway, there's one thing about the original series that even stood out to me as a kid that I never really just cared about, was distance. If you look at the original Star Trek series, 1966 through 1969, and really getting into the animated series from 72, 73 as well, it seems very clear that space is the whole galaxy. Like, they kind of traverse the whole galaxy, and warp speed is fast enough to cross hundreds of light years quite quickly. And then if you get to Next Generation, as early as, I think, season 2, there was an episode where Wesley Crusher was trying to get somewhere with a girl, and Wesley being Wesley, he talks about math and stuff to try to get her. Anyway, it's Wesley. But in that episode, he said something to the effect of something 20 to 26%, something in, around a quarter of the galaxy, the known galaxy, had been explored at that point, making it an exciting time. So the original series, which took place in the 23rd century, kind of represents that more or less most of the galaxy has been explored or could be explored. They had the ability to travel fast enough to get from one point to another quite quickly. But by the Next Generation, which is just at 100 years later in the 24th century, they've only explored a quarter of the galaxy, let's say. I understand why they made the change. It makes sense. It gave them more room. And I thought I would just talk about a few things. Because I was watching some episodes of the original series on Netflix recently for unrelated videos, and just because I needed to have something up while I was doing other things, and I just thought, why not? But there are some really good examples of this in the original series, and I'm not even going to try to say them all here off the top of my head, because a lot of these references are pretty much in passing, but others are key to the plot. For example, in the second pilot episode, Where No Man Has Gone Before, they get to the galactic edge quite easily. Not only that, they get the flight recorder from an old vessel, the SS Valiant, which had been there around 200 years earlier, they said. So obviously an old school ship made right after warp was invented was able to get to the edge of the galaxy. So it traversed quite far. Another good early example would be the episode Arena, the one where we see the Gorn, one of my favorites. It's just a good episode. Well, in that episode, at the end, they say they were tossed 500 parsecs. A parsec is about 3.26 light years, or 3¼ light years. So 500 parsecs would be over 1600 light years, which is an interesting figure because 500 parsecs is about how far you can see with the naked eye stars. So that was kind of cool. They said they were tossed to the opposite side of the galaxy in that episode, 500 parsecs. Not so much the full galaxy, but you know, you could imagine they're saying the visible galaxy. That makes sense. Then they order warp 1 to get back where they came from. Well, if they went over 1600 light years and trying to get back at warp 1, yeah, you see the problem. They must have a lot of time on their hands. Another one is Operation Annihilate, the final episode of season 1. They show a graph of this alien species invading across the galaxy, and they're very clear to say this, that this wave of destruction, invasion, catastrophe, craziness spans the entire galaxy and everything. So it's clear there that we're talking on a galactic scale, not just a quadrant. You know, another one I just decided to kind of talk about was Metamorphosis, another one of my favorite episodes where we meet Zephyr Cochrane, the inventor of warp, and it said in there he's from Alpha Centauri. I just thought I'd mention it because it shows that we really changed the whole initial warp thing in the Next Generation movies and even references. And the way space is referred to, distance is referred to in that episode is kind of interesting as well. Another one would be another favorite episode, Journey to Babel, one I was actually watching for a different video. And in that, we don't have so much as distance, but we have very high warp speeds talked about, warp 10, warp 11, so on and so forth. Whereas the Enterprise is said to be capable of a maximum of warp 9. And it seems like once they go over about warp 7, people start to get nervous on the ship. So it's just interesting to see how warp is dealt with in the show. And another one that I watched a few months ago, The Gamesters of Tristellan. It also shows quite vast distances of space being transported, and it mentions figures, and the Enterprise obviously goes several hundred light years in a few hours, if not even less, in that episode, showing that it actually, and it's not even going that fast, it's like warp 2 or something if memory serves. Again, this is all off the top of my head. This isn't me really digging it out. Yeah, you guys are smart. You can watch episodes or pull up quotes if you like to see the exact numbers. This is just more of a food for thought. Another one is Day of the Dove, where the Enterprise is speeding out of control and will leave the galaxy quickly, if not, harnessed. So it shows that the Enterprise can ride out of the galaxy in a few hours or maybe a day or two, if not checked. So that kind of shows you the Enterprise is going super fast, or the galaxy is rather small, which it's not. And another one I was recently watching, because it was just kind of on the playlist, was That Which Survives. This was the most recent one I watched last night, so the numbers are quite clear in my head. In that, the Enterprise is flung just a smidge under 1,000 light years, like 990. And it's said that it, warp 7, warp 8, it'll take them about 11 hours to get back where they came from. So this is good, concrete, hey, we can travel 1,000 light years at more or less maximum warp in half a day. Now take that to, say, Voyager, where they are 70,000, 75,000, give or take, light years from home, and they say it'll take them at maximum warp, in the Intrepid class is the fastest ship in the fleet at the time, which is said to be at 9.97, I believe, max speed. It'll take them 70 years to get home. And people have always said that, oh, the old scale was slower. Warp 8 in the old scale was more like, I don't know, warp 5 or warp 6 in the new. So if that's true, then warp 9.9 in the new scale should just be off the charts for the old scale. But I just thought that was interesting, how distance and speed is addressed in the original series. And this isn't something that people talk about. I actually did several Google searches to see if there was articles addressing it, and there really aren't. And with all this stuff about Enterprise and Discovery shattering canon, in a very real sense, Next Generation did it long before by just dramatically changing the perceived size of the galaxy and distances that starships could travel in the time period. Again, just food for thought. If this actually interests you, you can pull up the numbers for yourself. To me, it was just, hey, in the 60s, the way they were doing the show, they wanted to be able to go pretty much anywhere in the galaxy and get there relatively quickly, so that's how it was written. By the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, they changed their mind. And they essentially made the ships much slower, even though in canon, they're supposed to be much faster. In reality, if you really compare the numbers and what's said on screen, they're slower. Now you could say when they said galaxy in the original series, they mostly just meant the Alpha Quadrant. Okay, fine, but that doesn't really alleviate the problem of them directly mentioning light years and parsecs, which are firm mathematical units. So we can give them a little leeway for the nouns they use, galaxy, and they do kind of interchange a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I just, like I said, I was doing research and kind of getting other videos ready, and just thought that might be something other people had noticed and thought was odd, and since no one else has mentioned it, hey, why not me? If this interests you, let me know. Maybe I could do a little more, planned out and structured, mild critique videos, or just pointing out inconsistencies if you like. I could even kind of do an episode by episode brief review, but that would take quite a bit of time. Maybe some drinking. Sounds like a good way to blow a weekend, doesn't it? But yeah, just a very off-the-cuff episode. Essentially recording this while waiting on dinner to be done, so hungry and trying to distract myself. But yeah, check it out for yourself. It's kind of interesting how space and time and distance are all treated in the original series vis-a-vis any Star Trek that has come since. Anywho, appreciate you tuning in. Any comments, please share them below. And this is Misha, and I will catch you very soon next time. Alright, going to have dinner, guys. Going to have dinner.